Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. We're just going to give a few minutes for participants to get logged in, and then we'll look forward to getting started with what should be a great webinar. So please just stand by. Hey, everybody, just give us one more minute for people who are logging on, and then we'll be getting started. Thanks for joining us today. All right, let's get started. Thanks, everybody. I'm Ed Keller. I'm the Executive Director of MRII, the Market Research Institute International, and it's a pleasure to welcome you all to today's webinar. We're thrilled to have over 250 people who have registered for this webinar from about 40 countries. So welcome, everybody, wherever you are. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. We have a fascinating topic for today, namely, what are the best practices and the special care that must be taken to ensure high-quality data when our research is about a touchy or a sensitive topic, be it mental health or sex or cannabis, which is the topic of the case study you'll hear about today. I'll introduce our two speakers in just a moment, but first, let me cover a few housekeeping detail, and then I'd like to briefly introduce you to MRII. Our webinar speakers will be speaking for about half an hour, which will leave plenty of time for your questions to be answered. So please feel free to ask your questions via the Q&A tab at the bottom of the page, and we'll get to as many of them as we can after the speakers have completed their presentation. And we are recording today's session, and when we're done, we'll give you an email address to send a request for the recording if you wish to receive it. So with that, let me just give a brief background about MRII for those of you who are not familiar with us. We're a not-for-profit educational institute with a singular mission, which is to provide education and skills development about best practices in market research, insights, and analytics. We have a variety of ways we do this to meet the needs of both practitioners as well as users of research, and from those who are relatively new to the industry to those who are experienced and want to brush up and learn more. This suite of learning channels includes a comprehensive market research training courses that are offered in partnership with the University of Georgia that address the core skills that market researchers need to master, from sampling and advanced analytics to quantitative methods, qualitative research, to name just a few. We also host regularly scheduled webinars across a range of market research topics, such as the one that you're listening to today, and these run almost monthly. We have a YouTube channel with a range of videos on a variety of topics that you can tune into for videos that range from about 2 minutes to maybe 6 minutes. We have a podcast series called Insights and Innovators that you can find wherever you like to listen to your favorite podcasts, where we feature leaders in our industry, whether they're heads of insights from companies like Mondelez or PepsiCo, to leaders in major research agencies, sample providers, and the like. And I hope you'll check them out and take advantage of all we have to offer to help train and upskill professionals such as yourself. And you can learn more about all of this on our website, mrii.org. So moving now to the next slide, let's go today's speakers. Cannabis use is on the rise, and not just among the usual suspects. And in today's webinar, Alex De Montero from Full Circle Research and Jed Purcell from Performance Research will reveal findings from a new study exploring cannabis usage across the US focusing on how it intersects with sports fandom, active lifestyles, and brand marketing. You'll learn which sports fans are most likely to embrace cannabis sponsorships, but more importantly, you'll learn special steps you can take to ensure data quality when asking respondents to respond honestly when questioned about uncomfortable topics. Next slide. Jed is the president and co-founder of Performance Research, which he started in 1985 when he realized that research and evaluation was the missing leg in sponsorship and experiential marketing. Jed holds a doctorate in sports management from Temple University and completed undergraduate work in psychology from Dartmouth College and pre-doctoral studies at the Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania. A short client list covers over 25 leading brands, including Visa, UBS, M&M Mars, and Coca-Cola. Major sports and entertainment property clients include the NCAA, ESPN, NASCAR, Disney, and Broadway across America. Jed's an avid sailor and polo player, and he lives in Newport, Rhode Island. Alex is the Chief Product Officer and the ISO Quality Officer at Full Circle Research, where she leads global panel strategy, strategic partnerships, and award-winning data quality initiatives. She brings over 25 years of experience in direct marketing, panel management, and research integrity, including leadership roles at Ipsos Interactive Services. Full Circle Research is an industry leader in online data quality. They were named Panel Company of the Year by the Market Research Society and Insights Excellence Awards, ISO certified since 2014 and known for its fraud prevention techniques, Honor, and Watchdog. Alex also serves as chair of the board of CIRC and is active with the Insights Association Council on Data Integrity, helping to advance ethical and reliable research practices across the industry. So Alex and Jed, thanks very much for being here today to share your expertise. And let me now turn it over to the two of you.
Thanks, Ed.
Yeah, thank you, Ed. I guess I'll kick it off. Thank you, Ed, and MRII, Full Circle, Georgia Center, and especially everyone attending. I had no idea there'd be so many different countries represented here. So that's very exciting for us as speakers. We're talking about touchy topics, and Ed mentioned a few, but I think in reality, everyone gets touchy about certain things or has certain sensitivities. It doesn't have to be like the common things that we think of. It can be in almost any situation, a different person will be sensitive to something that doesn't bother anyone else. And when we ask them questions, they may not fully be honest in their answers because it's a sensitive topic. So from a research perspective, I think that touchy depends on a lot of things. It depends on who we are researching. You know, demographics, age, gender, cultural background, where you live, religious beliefs, they can all determine how open someone will be if you're asking them questions in a research setting. And then the who is asking. In a lot of research, we don't really, the respondent doesn't really know why this is being done or who is asking. I mean, you may open up, you could be sitting on a plane or in a bar, in a restaurant or something, and tell the person next to you that you don't know at all everything about your life. And yet you get to a research setting and all of a sudden people might hold back. I think it's because you don't really know where the answer is going. Like, why is somebody asking me this? So that kind of vague feeling about who is asking and why are they asking this can make somebody's sensitivities just elevate a little bit. And then I think, you know, the where is it, where people are asking this question. I mean, we all have been to doctor's offices where they ask us personal questions. We're like, okay, I'm in a doctor's office. But then if you get these questions on an online survey, it's like, whoa. You know, maybe I don't want to tell you, and I don't really want anyone else to know how I feel about this. So the point is we can't make assumptions about what is touchy or not. I think we should almost go into any survey with that feeling that somebody might hold back for whatever reason. And I never, ever thought that working in sports and sponsorship that we would be hired to work with touchy topics. When you see these images on the screen, immigration, obviously in the United States, is a very key topic now, that a lot where people don't really want to talk about it. But it was probably 10 or 15 years ago, we were asked by a major bank to go to a Hispanic festival and talk to people at the festival why they aren't using banking services at the same rate. It wasn't that formal the way we're asking, and using particularly ATM machines that the bank was trying to promote. And the reason behind it is that a lot of immigrants are very protective of their being here and don't want data being recorded. And even the ATM machines were seen as an invasion of privacy. And it was meant to be that we ask these questions in an environment where they feel comfortable with the festival. And yet it came off of it's like, why are you asking me here in my environment about banking? And I think the project eventually was successful, but I realized we were in the wrong place at the wrong time to be asking those questions. Another great example of wrong time, wrong place, but it did work out. We were asked to go to an NFL game, and we were talking to basically men age 25 and up or whatever. But the conversation was all about erectile dysfunction and the new sponsor, which was a drug company with an erectile dysfunction product. And can you just imagine someone walking up to you when you're going to a football game and say, hey, do you remember any sponsors? Can you list some sponsors? Now we want to talk to you about erectile dysfunction. And they're with a group of buddies. Is this appropriate or not? But most people took it in stride. And when they realized our issue was not about their health concerns, but about sponsorship, they did answer questions and kind of took it as a fun thing to do. Less fun, but much more important. In June 2020 in the United States, the Black Lives Matter movement was really hitting its stride. And it was concern for major brands, but also major sports properties of how do we address this? It's a huge social issue in the United States. We don't want to be on the wrong side of it. We want to be mostly progressive, but also don't want to offend our core fans. And so we asked people, this was online and with Full Circle, we asked people, which of these sports properties do you think are doing the best job? And if you were a NASCAR fan, we wanted you to, react to that property and so on and so forth. The surprise answer to that was that NASCAR came out as the leader in this. No one ever saw that coming. And the reason being, NASCAR has traditionally a very conservative fan base. And yet, as an organization, they had decided to just move ahead and ban the Confederate flag, which is a symbol of racism in the United States going way, way back, to ban it from ever being flying at their tracks or on any property that they own. And it really, to their credit, they took a huge risk, but that research is, I know NASCAR did the research on it and we did our research and it came to the same results. People were really happy and more likely to become fans of NASCAR because of their being socially progressive, but it was a very, very sensitive topic. And next to last one on this list, organ donation. You don't think of sports in organ donation, but we had a client in a state-run organ donation center that was really concerned about people not signing up for organ donation. And they sponsored a car at a racetrack. Now, you think that's just so opposite, but it was actually very clever because this is a sport where people can actually die. And to ask these questions in an environment where death is a possibility in the sport actually got people to talk because we could frame it around, okay, we're in a situation. What do you think? You don't have to make it personal, but can we talk about this? And people were very, very willing to do that. And cannabis, you might not smoke it, you might not vape it, you might not chew it, but people do talk about it. And in the United States, it's changing. It's become legal in a lot of states. We can actually switch to the next slide right now if you want. It's like, why cannabis and why now? Why are we studying this now? I would like to look at it from the perspective of if you're a sports sponsor or if you're a property looking for sponsors. It's a really fast growing category. I have a close friend who made a lot of money in car washing business. He owns a chain of car washes. And then he started opening up cannabis stores. And I don't even think I did not know he had any connection to cannabis in any way commercially. And so I asked him why, and he said, "Well, car washes are great business, but they're weather dependent. Cannabis, people do it every day. So why wouldn't I want to be in a business that's open every day and people are going to come?" And I thought, wow, you're really thinking this just purely from a business perspective. And it made me realize this is growing faster than I thought because I have a friend now in the business. The policies are changing quickly too. In the United States, it's not legal in every state, but I have a sense that not everyone knows whether what is legal in their state or what is not legal. And so it's a moving target. And I think this is because it's a moving target. It's very important for those who work in advertising or sponsorship or any marketing type of effort of just to keep up with the moving target. So research is is essential to understanding that. For sports sponsors, it's all about audience overlap. A sponsor doesn't want to be where their target market is not. So knowing how cannabis overlaps with an audience is absolutely essential. But maybe the biggest thing is when brands start to sponsor things, one of the things they're looking for is visibility and legitimacy. And cannabis has maybe had visibility, but from a commercial standpoint, it has not always had legitimacy. So if a sponsor comes and wants to connect with it, National Football League or the NBA or any major sport, by being accepted partner with that sport, it gives them that legitimacy. So that's why now, I think, or why cannabis and why it's important right now. But another big reason is that I don't know, I don't love this expression, but I think it fits. The early bird gets the worm. Well, early movers in sponsorship often get the best credit for what they're doing, the best brand distinction and the highest brand loyalty. I know this is a very American base, but how many of you associate Tide with NASCAR? I mean, I don't think they even sponsor NASCAR to this day, but it often comes up as the first sponsor people will mention. It's not because they had the best driver. It's not because they won a lot of races. It wasn't that they were spending the most amount of money. It was that they were the first non-beer, non-auto, non-gasoline, and generically speaking, non-male product to enter as a sponsor of NASCAR. So being the first makes a lot of difference. And so that is why now and why being first counts. So this type of research helps people get into it. Let's move to the next one.
I think it's me. I just wanted to add a few things to what Jen just said.
Absolutely, please. Yeah.
So this study is actually really interesting because it sits at the intersection of three powerful trends. First of all, the cannabis normalization. Again, legalization is growing, usage is rising across generation, but not just among younger audiences or counterculture groups, but across every age, geography, and lifestyle. And what's more, it's increasingly mainstream with growing ties to wellness, to medicine, and even sports. And so in the sports sponsorship, leagues, teams, and collegiate programs are increasingly open to cannabis adjacent brands. And the stigma surrounding cannabis use is diminishing, even though it's not completely gone. And so we did focus on how they intersect with sports fandom, health-conscious behaviors, and overall consumer attitudes towards sponsorship and branding. But here's the twist. How these segments show up in your data depends on how you balance. And we will show you how complete skewed toward maybe more vocal, engaged users, those that are more likely to self-identify and support cannabis sponsorships. Starts, on the other hand, capture a more cautious population, one that may still use cannabis, but is less enthusiastic, more private, and certainly more hesitant to associate with it publicly. And so we'll talk about why this topic matters, both from a research integrity standpoint and a business strategy lens, and explore what happens when you balance your sample on starts versus completes, and how cannabis usage and sports fandom intersect, sometimes contradict expectations, And finally, how decisions about sampling methodology can significantly influence the insights that shape your marketing and sponsorship strategies. So we've all been there. The survey topic is sensitive. You've asked the right questions. You targeted the right population. You launched a well-designed survey. But when the data comes back, the story doesn't quite align with your expectation or with reality on the ground. And so what if the problem isn't your questionnaire, but your assumptions about how to balance your sample? Most researchers use balancing on completes, respondents who finish the entire survey, and they use this as the gold standard for representativeness. But what if that very assumption is, in fact, creating a hidden bias? In this study, we tested that question. We compared responses between groups balanced on starts and those balanced on completes. And what we found was actually surprising. Limiting your analysis to completes may actually introduce a new kind of bias, one that very quietly distorts your results by favoring only the most eager, the most engaged, or the most accepting respondents, leading you to maybe build a brand narrative on a narrow and overly optimistic slice of the audience. Before we go further, let's just basically pause and define the key term balancing. In sampling, we often apply demographic quotas, age, gender, region, race, so that our results reflect the general population. But when those quotas are applied, it actually matters. Balancing on starts means quotas are filled at the moment someone enters the survey. At Full Circle, we use the US 2025 census to balance on starts. Balancing on completes means quotas are filled after the survey is finished. It sounds subtle, but the implications are huge, especially for sensitive topics. Balancing on starts reflects the natural incidence. It captures the true mix of interest. And if paired with a robust fraud detection, it also ensures data hygiene and representativeness. Balancing on completes applies quotas after people drop out. The risk is over or under indexing of certain groups. And in some cases, it introduces an optimism bias, especially on topics where stigma may cause some to abandon the survey. And so if I had to sum it up, I would say that balancing on starts captures reality, when balancing on completes may manufacture reality. We've long treated completes as the ideal, fully finished survey, clean data, quota fills, but in sensitive topic research, this approach might actually give you a misleading signal. And so here are 5 reasons why balancing on starts may be the better choice. The first one is the true audience interest. Starts reflect the real-world population willing to engage with a topic before fatigue, discomfort, or any privacy concern filter them out. It avoids over-engineering. Balancing on completes often requires artificially boosting certain segments that distorts natural incidence because you're forcing representativeness at the end rather than observing it from the start, and it may inflate niche opinions. It also reveals a real drop-off patterns because non-completes aren't just a nuisance, they're insight. If large numbers exit the survey at a certain point, that may say more than any response that they could give. Balancing on starts exposes that reality, while balancing on completes may hide it by artificially propping up those underrepresented groups. It also reduces survey distortion. Again, topic sensitivity, survey length, and device friction disproportionately impact completion rates, and those effects compound bias. And then this came actually as a surprise. It also improves participant experience. In our study, 23% of completes were classified as demographic over quotas. That's 116 people that were turned away after qualifying. In contrast, only 3% were over quota in the starts balance group. And that's a major difference in respect and efficiency for the participant. So balancing on starts let us manage engagement in real time. We monitor expected response rate by demographic, and we adjust sampling to ensure that no single group dominates completions early on. And that way, we're able to reduce bias and maintain a more balanced representation across the full field. Now, a quick snapshot of our study before I turn it back over to Jet for the findings. We fielded the survey last month between April 23rd to 26th. We collected slightly above 1,000 completes, 500 for each cell approximately. We used Full Circle's ISO 20252 panel, including Honor, our proprietary pre-survey security checks, and Watchdog, our during survey security checks. Honor is global, it's agile, and it's built to adapt to any new type of fraud, and it includes a whole set of fraud prevention, bot checks and traps, digital fingerprinting, deduplication, device risk assessment, IP proxy analysis, geo-IP validation, zip code checks. We do demo-specific scoring and user behavior analysis, tabbing prevention, AI response detection. We also expose everyone pre-survey to either a MaxDiff, so a best worst scaling exercise, or an acquiescence bias check. And then finally on open end. Watchdog kicks in after everyone has passed all the pre-survey check. And Watchdog continually monitors surveys in real time to ensure statistical relevance by analyzing very precisely the conversion rates, the traffic patterns, the device characteristics, and the overall user behavior. And so with that, I'll hand it over to Jet to walk you through the screening and then the results.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. The screening was fairly simple. We, first of all, needed to talk to sports fans because we were looking at the intersection between cannabis and sports fans. And by fans, I mean either as a fan watching a sport or as a participant in a sport. We spoke both to cannabis users and non-users, and we did not screen for any quota in that. We just wanted to fall out naturally in the survey. But it was really important to us to have non-users because it's the whole acceptability of cannabis in the sports world is going to be, could be potentially very different between whether you are a user or a non-user. Mostly important is that it's not legal in every state in the United States. So we only ask these questions in states where cannabis is legal. That pretty much completes the screening. We can go on. I think I'd like to just talk about some highlights, because as much as this webinar is really about data integrity, yeah, I know some people just want to know what were some of the highlight results about the cannabis part of it. Some fun facts. CBD use was highest among millennials. THC use, which is more controlled in the United States, was highest among Gen Z, so skewing a little bit younger. Men were more likely than women to use both CBD and THC. Those who play sports are more likely to use both CBD and THC. When looking at fans of sports, CBD and THC usage was highest among fans of UFC, NASCAR, pickleball, NLH, National Hockey League, and the NBA. I mean, I never thought I would see a chart where NASCAR and pickleball got similar scores, but there it happens. Interestingly, user acceptance of THC and CBD sponsorships and having positive perception of those sponsorships were highest among the fans of those same sports. So in other words, usage can be correlated to a certain degree with acceptance in the sports world. The biggest surprise to me was that there was no difference in any of our results that we could find, or no significant differences in political affiliation. And that almost never happens on touchy topics. But for some reason on this, there was no difference whether you are where you fall in the political landscape. So why did we focus on college sports for this discussion? The easy answer is that we never look at sports sponsorship as researchers in a generic sense. It has to be more specific. It's, if you're going to sponsor something, is it going to be sport or is it going to be a non-sport? And if it's a sport, it's not just sports in general. There's a big difference between sponsoring football and sponsoring baseball or ice hockey or the Olympics, etc. And then there can be a big difference in what level you're talking about for sponsorship. Is it professional? Is it college? Is it amateur? Is it youth level? So there are all these different scenarios, but researching and pinpointing down that funnel of how specific to get is really important to a sponsor. You just can't ask it generically. So we picked college sports as our narrow focus for a couple of reasons. One, the first is that college sports have been in flux lately, and it's mostly having to do with the name, likeness, and image issue. So the landscape of college athletes being able to market themselves is a big fundamental change in college athletics in the last year and a half. So already that whole platform of sponsorship is changing. Another important part of it is just about a year ago, the NCAA, which governs college sports in the United States, voted to remove cannabis from their banned substances list. So that was a big step because it was somewhat saying cannabis is, we're not going to control for that anymore. That's a private thing. So that removed it from the slate of concerns. And probably a big reason, just a couple months ago, the University of Southern California, which is a huge sports powerhouse among universities in the United States, made big headlines when they signed on with a cannabis sponsor. It's called Cookies. It's a CBD brand to sponsor their football team and the men's and women's basketball teams. They were the first ones to do so. And I had a quote, or came across a quote from their athletic director, and he said, a lot of folks, and I'm reading this from his words, a lot of folks will disagree with our decision. But at the end of the day, if we did not push forward, if we did not innovate, if we did not look for different revenue streams, eventually I would hate to be one of those schools that looks back and goes, how did we get left behind? And I think from a research perspective, we don't want to get left behind either. So we move forward. So if we look at the slide on how shifts with balancing. Yeah, this slide tells quite a few stories. If you look at the left-hand side, you can see of the chart on the gray bar, you can see 1/3 or 33% of starts reported that they use CBD products. But if you look at the second half of that on the red bar, 52% of completes said so. That 20% is a big difference and kind of a concerning difference of why that gap would exist. The same gaps, if you look at to the right-hand side of the chart, are for THC use as opposed to CBD use. And again, there's big difference. This is the kind of thing where you say to yourself, well, what's going on here? And Alex has started to explain it and will continue to explain that. But from a marketing perspective, it looks like the scenario of cannabis sponsorship in sports or college sports appears much better opportunity with the starts than the completes. But appearances can be deceiving. We have one more chart to show this if we go to the next one. I can't actually see it. Did we go to the next one? No. Okay, yeah.
Which one? This one?
This one, yeah. So this was on a 5-point scale on how interested, how would a CBD brand sponsorship influence your perception of a team or league? Again, we're seeing really big difference. On the positive side is I'm just looking at my notes here because I can't actually see that on a screen. On the positive side, just 25% of the starts said it would have a positive impact on the team or the league. But 40% of the completes, again, a big difference. If we go down to the left-hand side of the charts and down to the lower one, 32% of the starts said that would influence the perception of the team or league if it was a THC sponsorship, but 45% of the completes did so. So these are kind of major things to consider, big differences. If we go to the top right corner, it's 20% are more likely to support a team or a league that has a CBD brand sponsorship, but 36% of the complete said so. Big difference. And then finally, the last one on the bottom right, would a THC brand sponsorship make you more or less likely to support a team or league? 28% versus 41%. So the fact that we see this on different questions throughout, it just forces the question, what's going on here? And if we go to the next slide, we have one more to just kind of prove that point. On this one, this is about how acceptable do you think it is for THC brands to sponsor sports teams or leagues? And I have to reiterate, THC is not legal in every state. So it has a more powerful impact on what people might think of as acceptable. For the starts, 37% said it was acceptable, but 35% said not acceptable. So you can see it's half, basically the middle missing are those that just don't care. So you can see it's really a divisive topic here among the starts. But if you look at the completes, it's not divisive at all, 51% versus 21%. So if I were consulting with a sports organization, whether they're on the sponsor side, I would have two completely different sponsor side or the sponsor side, brand side. I would have two completely different scenarios to speak to. And so that is a concern that I think Alex will now address. So,
yes, sorry. So thank you, Jed. So here's what we learned. Balancing on starts gives you a more complete view of the population, not just the loudest or the most passionate, but also the hesitant, the conflicted, and the quiet middle. It doesn't mean lower quality, as long as you're using strong hygiene, fraud prevention, attention checks, consistent device compatibility, you still get clean and valid data. But you also protect yourself from response bias, because the people who complete surveys about cannabis are likely not average users. They might be more open, more experienced, or more interested in the topic. That's not a bad thing, but it's not the whole picture. So what's the bottom line? If you want to understand enthusiasm, you can look at completes. If you want to understand truth, balance on starts. And this isn't just a subtle methodological choice. It's a safeguard, a way to ensure your research reflects reality, not just what's convenient to measure. And for marketers, researchers, and sponsors navigating fast-moving cultural territory, that distinction could actually be the difference between launching a resonant campaign or missing the mark entirely. So the key takeaway is this: in sensitive topic research, relying only on completes can create the illusion of clarity while quietly distorting your insights. And if you want to uncover truth, not just the enthusiasm, balance on well-vetted starts and preserve the complexity of your audience. So this concludes our presentation today. We can now move to the Q&A.
Great. Well, thank you so much to both of you. We really appreciate everything that you've shared today. This is Ed. My video is not going on. I'm not sure why, but hopefully you can hear me. I'm going to start to ask some questions that we've received for anybody in the audience. If you have questions, please put them in the Q&A, and we will get to as many as time permits. And let me start with sort of a basic question that came in from somebody, but there was a lot of territory that you guys covered. So somebody said, can you just kindly re-explain the starts and completes and how that works?
Sure. So Jed, are you okay with me taking this?
Oh yeah, that is your expertise. Yeah, absolutely. I have a feeling you're going to be taking 99% of the questions.
So let me actually go back to the slide here. So what happens is you have two ways of balancing. You either can balance on the starts, which means that you're using, again, we're using the US 2025 census. And so you ensure that your starts mimic that US census right from the start. What we also do is we actually send the sample in a staged way, because we also have some historical data as to the average response rate by demographic. Some demographic are much faster at responding to surveys than others. So that's the balancing on the start. So we make sure that anyone entering the survey is balanced on the starts. When you do balancing on completes, you basically end up with over quotas, because you're doing your quota based on the completes, which means that you'll likely have, again, the fastest respondents that will have more and faster completes than others, which leads to a not so great experience with the respondent.
All right.
The difference between starts, you don't need to correct your data, while when you balance on completes, you need to correct your data to ensure your statistical balance.
Okay, thank you. Where in the survey do you look at balancing on clicks? Is it at each demographic question or at the end of the screener?
So it's not a balancing on clicks. So we're looking at the different responses based on, so we had two different cells. One where we balanced on the starts, and the second cell where we balanced on the completes. They all had the exact same survey. It was fielded at the exact same time. And basically what we're looking at the different responses to the exact same questions based on balancing on starts versus completes. And this is what I was basically saying as a conclusion. When you're surveying and when you're addressing a sensitive topic, you might have differences in your data when you basically talk to people that are already fans or already users versus those that might have dropped off initially from the starts because they're not comfortable with sharing potential usage of THC or CBD. So that's what we were trying to basically show you, is balancing on starts versus completes can have drastic differences in the survey results, in the responses, especially when addressing sensitive topics.
All right, the questions are coming in. Please keep them coming and we'll get to as many as we can. The next question says, when you say sending sample in staged waves, can you please go into more detail?
Sure. So again, as I was saying, different demographics response in different timings. So if you want to have a balanced group of people that will start the survey, you're going to look at all the different demographic, right? They have very different behaviors when it comes to taking surveys. So what we do is we know that certain groups respond much quicker than others. So we tend to sample in a staged way. So meaning that we're not sending everyone at the same time to the survey. We're doing this in a staged way.
All right. How are clients reacting to the starts and the uneven end sizes? I can see that clients expect X completes.
They're still going to get X completes. It doesn't change anything to the final number of completes. We're just basically, by balancing on starts, we are providing the natural incidence rate because there's a natural dropout, versus on completes where when the client balances on complete, the client does the balancing, which sometimes, as we can see, can be a manufacturing of the reality versus a natural reality.
All right. Can you quota on starts to learn the market and use the completes percentage distribution for future research, assuming the screening criteria is the same?
I didn't get that, sorry.
I'll ask it again, and if it's not clear, we'll move on. But can you quota on starts to learn the market and use the completes percentage distribution for future research, assuming the screening criteria is the same? I think
Not
what it means
sure.
is you've finished the study exactly the way you've proposed. Could Jed or a similar client then use the completed data to say, okay, this is now the percentages I'm going to use for the future if I'm doing a similar study?
So you saw the differences between starts and completes. So again, depending if you're a researcher, if you are a sponsor, if you had done basically your research by balancing uncompletes, you might have identified or discovered that there was a high acceptance rates of a THC sponsor to sponsor a sports activity, for example. That was basically manufactured on the completes because the client is looking at the completes, is basically rebalancing based on the census on the completes. It doesn't include everyone that has dropped out because they were uncomfortable and because they were not specifically a fan of any THC or CBD brand sponsoring a sport. And so what happens is that a sponsor might take a decision based on a survey results that does not include the silent group, the group that is not favoring or not in agreement with a THC or CBD company sponsoring a sport. And so this is what I was saying, you can either hit or miss based on very different results. Now, Jed, maybe you want to add something to that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you said. Sponsorship, maybe as a advertising mechanism, can be made with very emotional decisions. And I think both on the brand side and on the property side, they're looking for very strong case scenarios or research data to suggest these are good fits and in a good investment. As a researcher, but then also becoming a consultant when we're asked to interpret the research, I'm always on the cautious side. So I can't imagine a situation where I would say, yes, use that data of completes later on for any purpose, because clearly in this scenario, the starts, I think, tell the truth that needs to be found. Not that any data is made up with the completes, but it's the truth scenario from a marketing perspective. So I would never recommend going back to the data and looking at it in a different way, just to make a different opinion or statement.
All right, Jed, another one for you, maybe. Do these findings about cannabis and sports fandom generalize to other stigmatized topics like mental health or sex or politics? You talked about a variety of topics, and I have to say, I would not have been the one wanting to be asking the NFL fans about erectile dysfunction. So I give your interviewers a lot of credit there.
Yeah, well, you know what, they try to make it fun, and that's part of it. Make people feel comfortable. And we always case these things as like, we know you don't need this, but your buddy right next to you, he might. So tell us,
Right.
answer some questions for us. So going back to actually, can you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah, the question is, do these findings about cannabis and sports fandom generalize to other stigmatized or touchy topics like mental health or politics or sex?
I don't know. I mean, who knows? I would say, knowing that this result happened when comparing starts versus completes, I would think it would happen in almost any touchy topic. So I would be careful with that. It's and as I said in the beginning, we don't know what makes somebody feel like it's a touchy topic or not. But the ones that we do know, certainly I would be really protective of having the highest quality data, and always keep it in the data integrity phase of any research.
All right, Alex, you mentioned that balancing on starts can reveal hidden bias. Can you give an example where relying on completes might have led to a client to the wrong decision?
Sure. Well, just on this survey alone, going back to these slides, like on the sponsorship, Jed, do you want to maybe go back into the data and see what kind of decision could have been taken by one of the sponsors if only looking at the completes versus at the starts.
Yeah, we know every data point just raises another question. And from a sponsor who could be spending, $1 million or upwards on a program, they would be asking, or we would want them to ask a lot of different questions. So a cannabis sponsor, this data is showing data among people who are users and non-users. You want to dig deeper because every product line also has a target market. And a non-user, particularly for THC, is not in their, they don't care so much what they think. It doesn't really matter because the league itself might care because they don't want to have a bad image or be put in a defensive position about the brands that they're partnering with. But from the sponsor side, they're not selling to non-users. So they would need to look further down the funnel of how this affects them. So there's so many decisions to be made besides the charts that are just here. But this is the first kind of opening of the door of whether this can be productive or not, or could it hurt an image or not. And then as you get the green light to go to the next step, then you look at that stage and keep going with as much data as you can collect to see if it's a viable partnership.
I think the risk is mainly over or under indexing. If you look at starts versus completes.
Yeah, and there's probably more risk, but in my perception of over indexing, just because if it's under, you may not be led to make huge investments in sponsorship, but if it's over, you could be dragged into that and make a mistake.
Somebody asked, to what extent does the balancing rule on starts versus completes apply to non-sensitive topics?
Alex, that's definitely for you.
So we personally only do balancing on starts. So I wouldn't know, but what we always basically ask all demos used for stratification upfront. They're known, they're asked upfront. So that's just basically how we do it. We believe, and that's our own opinion, that balancing on starts gives a better result, gives a result that is more towards the reality than balancing on completes.
Yep,
in some cases, again, it might not have any major difference, but again, we have seen that in sensitive topics, we see differences. Now, these differences can be because people don't feel comfortable answering some of these questions, so therefore they might drop off, or they might not basically say that they're using or either THC or CBD because they don't want to. So it really is very different from one survey to another.
Yeah.
So there's a couple oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, this whole topic was somewhat new to me. We've worked with Full Circle for years and pretty much use only Full Circle for online studies that we do. And when I saw these results, I immediately got, oh my gosh, have we been doing the wrong thing all along? And Alex said, oh no, not to worry. We've always done it with balancing on starts. And so it just made me feel really relieved that that we were doing the right thing and I wasn't even aware of this issue. So
you just knew there was a reason you were using Full Circle. You didn't know what it was.
Oh, there were a lot of great reasons. I mean, data integrity is absolutely the first one, but I just didn't know how far they went in this protection. So
there's a couple of questions. I'm going to just try to combine them, but some people are saying, couldn't there be other reasons that people dropped off, not just because they were uncomfortable with the topic? So one person said it'd be interesting to collect the reason the person quit the survey to help understand if the topic disinterest, discomfort is the reason for the dropout, if a follow-up email or sign-out screen is available on the platform. In other words, how do we know why they dropped out?
Well, I would say it would be very invasive to go back and ask them. And the typical answer would be like, I was running out of time, the survey was too long. So we always try to put the critical questions closer to the front so that time is not as much of an issue. And then we also will maybe put in questions that we don't care about as much that really might pique the interest of the respondent, thinking that it's something that, you know, appeals to their attention rather than appeals to what we need to know. But it would be interesting to go back and find out why. But I think, you know, we ask people why they aren't attending sports events like they had in the past. And that I know there are tons of reasons, but the reasons we always get, not enough time and not enough money. But in reality, there are a lot of other reasons behind that.
Right.
So I would think the answer might not be that clear.
Yeah,
All
some
right.
reasons sometimes are linked to the survey design, to the length of the survey, to the device that can be used to take that survey. Now, we mostly eliminated those, right? Because it was a device agnostic survey. It was what, probably 15-minute survey.
Yeah, or less. Yeah.
And so there were no major issues that were related to the survey itself. The design itself had been looked at carefully, again, because we were addressing a sensitive topic. As Jed was mentioning previously, you ask questions in a way, you prepare people, you tell them that it's a sensitive question, that they can or cannot answer to those questions, etc. And again, we only interviewed people that were of the legal age and that were located in a state where THC is legal. So we didn't want to ask anyone outside of a legal state to answer those questions.
All right, one quick question, and while we're doing this, Alex, maybe you can just forward to the next webinar while we wrap up. But Jed, I'm just curious, did you consider or your clients consider betting to have been a sensitive topic? Because for those of us in the U.S., we're quite aware of how much advertising there is now for betting, which I feel like wouldn't have been the case just a very short while ago.
Yeah, you would think so. It grew so fast, like almost exploded. And I think the problem now is it's not much different than alcohol sponsorships and I mean, tobacco sponsorships are banned in the US, but it's like, okay, we have a product we want to market, but have we created something that is maybe a little bit out of our control? So the sponsors typically aren't as much involved with the betting aspect of the sports as the betting platforms are.
Oh, yeah.
Right. I think it would be a great topic to study.
Right.
But.
All right. Well, listen, I want to thank everybody who tuned in, and thanks for all your questions. Hopefully we got to most of them, if not all. There was sort of a combination of some people asked questions on the Q&A, as well as others who were having a chat, some of which were for you guys and some of which I think were people chatting with each other. So you definitely stimulated a lot of conversation here. So thank you. I'd like to just tell everybody who's on the call that MRII will be having its next webinar on June 18th, again at noon Eastern time. And the topic here is, what does it all mean? Storytelling for insights professionals, with the speaker, David Intrader, who's the Chief Meaning Officer, an interesting title, at RTI Research. So we hope you'll tune in to that. Be on the lookout for both social posts, outbound emails. We're doing this one with SMR, so you may hear from us, you may hear from Georgia, you may hear from SMR. So be on the lookout for that. And if we go to the next slide, just to wrap up here, I want to thank Alex. I want to thank Jed. If you want to reach out to either of them, their emails are on this slide. If you'd like to receive a recording from this webinar, please email us at hello@mrii.org. It may take a couple of days for you to get it, but if you send in the request, we'll send that to you. So once again, thanks everybody who joined in. I hope you found this to be as valuable as I did. And Alex and Jed, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and expertise with our community here. Appreciate it.
Thank
Bye-bye,
you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.